Welcome to the Natural Health Podcast, where we bring awareness of sustainable health in the business hustle space. The Natural Health Podcast is perfect for the high-performing, business-minded individuals who want to work with their biochemistry to achieve optimal health. It's Friday, which means it's time for friends sharing facts about health, business, and overall success. In today's episode, we talk to Bianca Marics, who will talk about how stress affects your digestive system. Bianca is a clinical naturopath, certified life coach, and mindset coach that helps her patients disconnect from stress and anxiety and feels lasting wellness. Bianca specialises in GIT health and SIBO management, mood support, and women's wellness. Her passion is to help people build stress resilience, avoid burnout, and supercharge their health and mindset to feel their absolute best. Some interesting things about Bianca are she's actually a mother of two beautiful girls. She's also a naturopath, but one that cannot stand kale and avocados, right? True story. Interesting. So interesting, right? She turned to natural medicine and mindset work to help cure herself of high functioning anxiety about 15 years ago. Welcome to the Natural Health Podcast, Bianca.
Thank you. Thanks so much for that awesome intro.
You're most welcome. So avocados and kale just don't go for you? They don't work for you?
No, never liked avocados, and kale I actually used to love. And then during my pregnancies, I had such an aversion and I never recovered from it. So it's just one of those things that, I just can't have. It surprises everybody, and people have little mini heart attacks when I say that. They're like, what? But it's true.
Yeah, there you go. And you've got two beautiful girls. How lucky are they? What are their names, if you don't mind?
There is Lexi and Adeline.
Oh, how beautiful.
Yeah, they're lots of fun, cheeky and fun.
They definitely teach you things, don't they?
Yes, patience.
I love it. Well, Bianca, so you've done a lot in your life from what you said, and then about 15 years ago, you treated yourself from high functioning anxiety. I would love to know a little bit about what actually happened in that sense and what have been the key turning points in your journey to lead you to naturopathy and to where you are now.
Yeah, well, I had always had an interest in natural health, and when I was studying, it was actually at the time that I had very high functioning anxiety, so to the point that it really interrupted my day-to-day living. And, my biggest turning point for me was when I hit that exhaustion phase. I hit, the anxiety was at an all-time high. I was really suffering with lots of bad gut health, which was really driven by my high stress levels, and developed SIBO from all of this. And it was a very big wake-up call for me. And at around that time, I had some pretty hard feedback from one of my bosses at the time, that I was a really hard worker, but that I was going to be my own undoing, and that I was the cause of all of my stress. And you could imagine hearing something like that when you're just like, no, that's not me. But it was such a turning point for me hearing that feedback, and it drove me to learn more about stress, when I was studying and even as a new practitioner, and also our mindsets as well, and the stresses that we tend to put on ourselves. So here I am pretty much now doing that for other people. So that's been my journey.
Yeah, it's interesting the fact that your boss actually pulled you up and said that to you. Usually the bosses are the ones that are pushing you to work more.
Look, I've been really lucky. I've had some really amazing mentors in my adult work life, and I think they could see that I was working really hard, but I just needed to slow down and just to stop stressing about little things that didn't need to be worried about. So, big credit to them and people that I hold in very, very high regard. So a very lucky person.
Yeah, 100%. And I like in there how you put the little things that we shouldn't stress about. And I mean, yes. Especially with what's been happening this year, there are so many little and big things that, we shouldn't or should stress about in a way.
Definitely. 100% agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So look, here on the podcast, we talk a lot about success, right? And I want to find out, what does success look like to Bianca? I mean, it would have looked so different ages ago, 15 years ago when you're working that job compared to now. So what does success look like at the moment?
Yeah, you're right. 15 years ago, success was all tied around work and success. And, my version of success was heavily tied around to all of that. now with children, and it's all about being, success to me is all about being healthy, feeling energetic, and basically living a life that's full of purpose but also passion as well. So yeah, it's about feeling great and making an impact doing something that I enjoy.
Wow, full of purpose and passion. So what does that look like? What does the purpose and passion look like for you?
I think working in the areas that I do, which I really love, it doesn't feel like work. It's so much fun. And purpose also is my family too. So it's not just work as such, even though I don't really call it work, but family as well, spending time for the people that are important, friends, family. So that's how I see purpose. It's not always work related.
Yeah, I love that you said that, who doesn't want to go see a naturopath who doesn't see their work as work and actually enjoys it? That's perfect.
Exactly, yeah.
You're like, new patients, come at me. I love researching this.
Yeah, come at me.
I absolutely love that. So let's talk about today's topic. It's going to be such an interesting one because a lot of us know what stress is. We know the basics of stress, but a lot of us don't actually understand that it actually impacts your gut, right? So what we're going to talk about today is how stress affects the digestive system. So there's a new term out there called, or newish, called the gut-brain axis. Can you explain a little bit more detail on this for us?
Yeah, sure. It's quite simple, actually. The gut-brain axis is basically the communication between the gut and the brain. So it's a two-way communication between the central nervous system, the autonomic and the enteric nervous system, and the gut. And this is both a physical and chemical communication. And it's driven by, so we have the vagus nerve, which is part of the autonomic nervous system. And it's one of our biggest nerves and sends signals in both directions. And it's often described as the major highway between the gut and the brain. And we also have in there our chemical communication, which is in the form of our microbiota. So we often talk about, or we hear about our microbiome, but specifically we're talking about the bacteria. And that helps to modulate neuroactive compounds that interact with our nervous system. And also the immune system is part of this communication as well. So essentially, the gut-brain axis is the mechanisms by which the gut and the brain communicate. So that's, very simply.
Yeah, I love how in there you put the immune system, you put the brain, you put the gut, you mentioned all these keywords that people are like, oh my gosh, like I want to know more about these. All these, the microbiome, the microbiota, things like that. And the vagus nerve, like all these keywords, which are absolutely, it's important to know them and pay particular attention to them to actually understand how the two communicate. Yeah. So do you think when people say, I've got that gut feeling, isn't that interesting when they say the gut and feeling, which is the mind? And what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I think it's really important when people say that, especially patients, that we then delve deeper into the connection so that they can really understand the way that their nervous system and stress plays a part in their digestion, because they often can't put the two and two together. So it's our job to explain it in much further detail. So, and how stress affects our digestion.
Yeah, let's get into it. So how does stress impact digestion on a biological level? I want to know your input. Let's go.
Yeah, sure. So there's, it affects it in so many ways. And a good way that I like to describe it to patients as well is in relation to how the gut-brain axis and how stress disrupts communication. So we often talk about stress as activation of the sympathetic nervous system, which is all about being aware of danger. So we see things like reduced digestive activity, pupil dilation, increase in heart rate. There's more glucose being secreted from the liver, and like the stimulation of adrenaline. All of the things that we need to happen if we had to run, for example. So the vagus nerve, which is part of the parasympathetic nervous system, that's responsible for stimulating digestive activity. The whole concept of rest and digest comes from the parasympathetic nervous system. And it also contributes to decreasing our heart rate, reducing adrenaline production, and also relaxing the musculature of the gut, amongst many other things. So what stress does is it inhibits signals through the vagus nerve, and it reduces its function and also tone. So when this happens, we see a flow-on effect. We see changes in gut motility, and that's, whether it be acute or chronic stress. We see changes to the migrating motor complex, which is a big factor in SIBO development. We also see lots of other changes to our microbiota. We see an increase in inflammatory responses, so things like damage to the brush border and the epithelial lining of the gut, so contributing to leaky gut, for example. We see a reduction in stomach acid secretion, and our sympathetic nervous system is also responsible for reducing saliva. So there are changes happening at the very, very beginning of the digestive system, and we often forget to talk about that. So when people say that they've got a dry mouth, for example, alterations in appetite, changes in the pH of our gut, microbiome changes, reduction in diversity, and also changes to neurotransmitter synthesis as well, and short-chain fatty acid production in the gut. And stress reduces circulation to the gut. So we also see a reduction of nutrient breakdown and absorption. And when we don't break down our food, there is the flow-on effect from that too. So it's the list of the way that stress impacts the gut it's almost never ending. But we need to make sure that our patients understand the real key changes that are happening so that they can put two and two together.
Yeah, I mean, you just said now how stress impacts the gut, and you went on and on and on and on and on, right?
Yeah.
That's just the gut, and you kept naming these things. So I think we underestimate what stress, and I like that you put the acute and the chronic, it may do different damages to the individual, to the body, but we underestimate the impact of stress on the body, yet alone on the digestive system. And you said at the start, your saliva may drop. So what does that mean? If you don't have enough saliva, you got a dry mouth. That's the start of your digestive system, right?
Yeah. And we often forget about that. And it's like, if we're not breaking down our food properly, and we're rushing to eat on top of that, which is even worse. Plus, the sympathetic nervous system is responsible for reducing stomach acid secretion. You've got partially digested food entering the stomach, which is then not being broken down properly, then hits the small intestine and causes issues, and then goes to the next phase. It just has a flow-on effect from the very, very beginning.
Yeah. So next time, the individuals that are listening to this podcast, next time you have a dry mouth, don't put on that lip gloss, that lipstick, or whatever you're putting on to, dry lips and then dry mouth. Actually think about, are you stressed? What is happening? Thanks to this podcast, Bianca is going to go into detail what actually may be happening, if you do have a dry mouth, as simple as that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what would you say? You've mentioned some of the effects that can happen, but then the audience might be interesting. Like, okay, so fair enough, all of this stuff may be happening, that maybe affects the vagus nerve, the HCl and so forth. But what are the long-term effects stress can have on the gastrointestinal tract? What does the long-term effects look like, which some people may be at the moment?
And most people are. So just like the acute reaction to stress, a long list of effects, the long-term effect list is massive too. So the more stress you have, the more it predisposes you to things like chronic IBS, irritable bowel disease, even things like SIBO, because of the changes to the migrating motor complex. But it's also a risk factor, but also can exacerbate existing conditions. And then you've got, because stress affects the gut, then you have the long-term effects of gut inflammation. So anything from further food intolerances, increased risk of bowel cancers, increased neuroinflammation and mood changes, things like further anxiety, depression, even dementia. And inflammation is a key driver for things such as endometriosis. So the list really does go on. Weight gain, hormonal irregularities, type 2 diabetes, effects on fertility, because we know that high levels of cortisol actually suppresses the reproductive system the same way that it suppresses digestion. It's not a priority when we're stressed, so it suppresses it. And then, of course, you've got adrenal fatigue and exhaustion. So, and they're the effects of having not enough cortisol. Blood pressure issues, fluid retention, poor memory. So stress is really a key driver for gut and systemic inflammation, and that's where we see the flow-on effects. And we could double that list very easily.
Yeah, that's an absolutely huge list. I like the fact that you said it may actually make your current disease or, symptoms worse, which a lot of people wouldn't think about because the inflammation would be a key driver for all of these issues.
Yeah.
So it's not just new things popping up into your body or new symptoms or diseases, it's current ones being, maxed out in a sense. Wow.
It's a long list. It's a long list. And that's why, patients often come to us. They have this very complex case, and I'm definitely not saying that stress is the absolute be all and end all cause of everything, but by goodness, it's a massive driver and a risk factor, contributing factor to so many things. So, and as practitioners, we're often sitting there doing, almost trying to put puzzle pieces together as to really what's going on. And stress, I can guarantee you, is always in there somewhere. On some level.
It's a driver. And you have mentioned a few times SIBO. Can you just explain just quickly what that is for individuals who may not have heard about it, in short, and how stress may be linked with it in short, if that's possible, please?
Absolutely. So SIBO is a small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And that's basically where you have an increase in the number of pathogenic but also beneficial bacteria. So all of it. Growing in the small intestine. Now, the small intestine is not really supposed to have lots of bacterial presence there. It's supposed to be moved through to the large bowel. And for whatever reason, it hasn't been moved through. And what happens is that we then start to have this overgrowth. And one of the reasons that we can have, one of the contributing factors, I should say, where stress affects the migrating motor complex, which is the way that the small intestine actually moves. It's the musculature and the nerves that promote the movement of the small intestine so that food and everything else can get into the large bowel. So stress can often halter that and sort of think of it like when we're stressed and we sort of cramp up a little bit. There's not so much movement happening. And so that's one of the ways that stress can definitely contribute to SIBO. One of the ways. I mean, there's many, but that's just one of the main ones, actually.
Yeah. And that can result to such things as bloating, which a lot of women and individuals who may be listening to this may have that issue, and it may be stress related.
Look, absolutely. And, bloating, nausea, anxiety is a big symptom as well in SIBO, depending on, what type of bacteria are present and what gases that they're producing, because there's two of the main ones, can cause different systematic symptoms, even pain, body aches, all of those things. And you just don't think that it's the digestive system that's the problem. So, we always look at stress in relation to SIBO, always.
Yeah. Well, thanks for diving into that. A lot of individuals might be like, now, oh, this is so interesting. But you didn't mention anxiety. SIBO makes, so let's get this right. So stress may cause small intestinal bacterial overgrowth due to the motor complex, and then that may cause anxiety. So, wow, that's crazy. So what else is the link between anxiety, gut, and stress? Is there other links with it?
Yeah, so when it comes to stress in the gut and mood changes, so we know that our microbiota influences our mood. So it can actually produce or modulate neurotransmitters, things like dopamine, also norepinephrine as well, but things like serotonin and GABA. It's the whole wonderful world of psychobiotics, which is like a completely another topic. But our gut can produce neurotransmitters completely independent from our nervous system. So it's really important to remember that neurotransmitters such as GABA and serotonin are also involved in gut functionality, so not just our mood. So it's involved in intestinal motility, in pain perception, which is more GABA, and digestive secretions. And we know that approximately 90 to 95% of serotonin actually resides in our gut. So when we are under stress, we know that the levels of these neurotransmitters are reduced. So if we needed to run from something, which is the stress response, why in the world would we need to be feeling happy or relaxed or sleepy?
True.
So under the influence of an increased level of cortisol and glucocorticoids, we have both serotonin and GABA levels affected, therefore affecting our gut health and our mood. For example, to dive down deeper, we see things like tryptophan being shunted towards another metabolic pathway to produce B3, therefore more energy, so that there's actually a lot less tryptophan available for serotonin synthesis. And at the same time, we see things like GABA going down what we call the GABA shunt, where it is used to produce intermediates for the citric acid cycle. And the end result of that is more energy, because this is our body's main priority under stress. So stress, with stress, we also see increased gut permeability. So once again, as I mentioned, there's damage to the brush border and the epithelial lining. So we have an increased level of inflammatory markers that go on to affect the blood-brain barrier and therefore neuroinflammation. And there's actually a really big link with anxiety there. So, we hear the term leaky gut equals leaky brain. So stress, the increased presence of cortisol combined with inflammation, and then think about all of the other things that we do when we are overworked that do not benefit our gut health. We don't eat properly, probably drink some alcohol, lots of sugar, stimulants, medication. All of the above, including stress, are really big driving forces for altering the diversity of our gut bacteria. So, and then we see an increase in pathogenic bacteria that previously wasn't an issue before, because the numbers were kept in check, and now they finally have the opportunity to increase in number. So there's a decrease in the bacteria that have been shown to either produce or modulate our feel-good neurotransmitters. So that's what we know, that's how our gut affects our mood from what we know. So it's a whole nother world. It's a whole nother world. And there's lots of research being done, and the more we do, the more we will understand. So yeah, it'll be really interesting to watch. The more information that we learn.
This space is absolutely extraordinary. And I mean, with you just starting and saying that our gut that our gut can make these neurotransmitters without our central nervous system, that in itself might blow other people's minds away, because that is huge. So that's kind of like the food that you're eating, the state of your gut can have a direct link to your anxiety, depression, whatever you're feeling, to your moods. So you saying just that and then adding all those extra goodies onto it, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's wonderful and complex at the same time.
Yeah.
But the more we know, the more we can help people.
Yeah. And then you added psychobiotics. So can you just drill a little bit into that one? Because you did mention it, and I was like, let's talk about that little goodie.
That's okay. It's just basically just the way that our microbiota affects our mood. So, and basically what I just spoke about. So the way that our gut bacteria can either produce or modulate, neurotransmitters. So that's the term that we use, psychobiotics.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I absolutely love that. And how much our gut is responsible for how we feel. And I know there's absolutely amazing research coming from, I believe it's from Deakin University here in Melbourne, that they're doing research in the food mind project, something along those lines.
Yeah. There's a lot of research here in Australia and overseas. So it's like, watch this space. Yeah, absolutely amazing. So like you said at the start, as a business professional, we work so much. We work, stressed out hours. We stress ourselves out, right? So we seem to always stress ourselves out and always working and overworking and overdoing it, right? I wanted to know your input on the mindset behind glamourising, overworking, and how you believe we'll be able to shift this. I know it's a bit away from what we're talking about, gut microbes and so forth, but I want to know your view on this. Yeah, I think that it's part mindset, and it's also about adaptation as well. So we need to remember that part of our stress response is adaptation, and we tend to adapt to our new stress levels and live with it. So for many people, it feels normal to be in some sort of sympathetic nervous system dominance. So we really need to identify that we are in this state to begin with, because most people have no idea. So these are the people that might have trouble slowing down. The thought of stopping and doing nothing petrifies them. It actually really scares them. Buying expensive fitness devices, watches that tell you to stand up, tell you to breathe, and we still ignore it. So firstly, we need to be aware that our sympathetic nervous system is on all the time. And it might take a practitioner to highlight that for you. Where I feel that mindset comes into it is when we still really believe that we always have to be on to get stuff done. And when we are in this mindset, we tend to overwork consistently. So I'm not just talking about working late on occasion because you've got something coming up, an event or something at work, a presentation or whatever, or, you know, the need to knuckle down and get some work done. We are talking about always being in that energy, always working late, never taking time out, never resting, really burning the candle at both ends. And it's not just work hard, it's work hard, play hard. Essentially, like in relation to glamourising overworking, I think it's the belief that we need to work harder to prove ourselves over and over, and that if we don't, then we appear as if we're not enough in our own eyes and to others. We are taught to overwork. It's influenced by our parents, our family, teachers, social media, and the whole concept of hustling. And even mainstream media. Don't know if you remember the concept of, you know, soldier on, you know, when we're sick, soldier on type of thing. It's the concept of we don't need rest, we can still get through it. So it's so ingrained in us. And the result of this is that we don't prioritize our health. We don't rest properly. We ignore our body's signals that tell us to stop. Just think about one of the big ones I find is that we ignore the sensation to go to the toilet, and I mean like have a bowel motion. So we're working away and you sort of get the urge, and like, no, I'm going to push through it. I'm going to hold on and just try and get more work done. That in itself suppresses the vagus nerve, and it's the concept of use it or lose it, pretty much. So the tone reduces, and eventually we stop getting these urges. Pushing our lunch breaks further and further back until we're so hungry that we're going to faint. We get migraines and we're running to the pantry just going for the worst carbs possible just because we feel so nauseated. Checking your emails in bed, all of those sorts of things. So what do we do? What can we do? I think from my experience and, talking to patients, the number one thing is awareness. And that sounds too easy for people, but most people don't know that they're in that sympathetic nervous system state, that's always activated. And understanding how this is affecting that particular person's health is key, because it might be different for everybody. And we are not great at, people are not great at recognizing that in themselves, but they're really quick to point it out in somebody else. Oh, you work too hard, you do this. You got to rest, but we don't listen to our own advice quite often. So focusing on the small changes that we can implement so that you can prioritize your health. A lot of people have to schedule in rest time. Understanding that your worth is not equivalent to how hard you work, and that things don't have to be hard all the time. Looking after your health doesn't need to be hard all the time. And understanding, understanding that there is so much more that is within our control when it comes to stress management. There's so much talk about self-care now, especially on social media, which I think is wonderful. And understanding that self-care isn't selfish, it's essential.
Yeah, I love how you touched on all aspects there, especially the one that we don't feel worthy if we don't work hard. The fact that, we don't deserve time off until we finish this. We don't deserve that. So it's a whole mindset thing. It's a whole of what does work and success look like for me? What link do I have to that? What are my values? Exactly what you spoke about at the start, the whole mindset thing.
Yeah, it's really big. And so understanding that our worth is not tied up to how late we work at night, so to speak. So it's, and mindset work is always combined with action. So helping people work through that mindset is really important to tie it into showing people that by changing the way that they might be working during the day, how they prioritize their sleep, how they can improve their sleep, whatever it is for that individual, and actually trying it, getting through the other end, and then looking back going, hang on a minute, I still actually got my work done and I got to have a good night's sleep. So mindset work is always tied into some sort of action, and it's really up to us to maybe prompt the patient as to what their priorities should be, depending on their presentation.
Yeah. And at the start, you were talking about individuals who may be working too much and not, and holding it in. And I love that you mentioned that about holding it in, because, or some individuals don't like to go outside of their home. They don't do it at work. They only do it at a certain spot. But that impacts, we're talking about digestion and stress. So being stressed out means you're holding it in, which impacts your digestion, right?
Yeah. And I always use that example because everybody at some stage has experienced that. It's like, come on, it's not too much information. Everybody's just experienced that. It's a natural urge that we get. We need to go to the toilet, and we ignore it constantly, especially a lot of patients I see, they're in a corporate environment. They don't want to go at work, and I do get that. But it is that concept of use it or lose it. So we have to try to make that area of having a bowel motion a bit easier.
Yeah, and then individuals get constipated, and then toxic load, and just so much thing that flows on effect with that.
More gut inflammation, more cortisol release, and it's just the cycle that it's. Yeah, and then you forget that you're stressed because you're too worried about, oh my God, I've got leaky gut, I've got this, I've got that. Oh, my stress has got nothing to do with it. This is what my problem is. But we have to really think about the things that were driving it from the very beginning and that are continuing that wheel turning.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you a question. You did say at the start, individuals, we adapt to our stress. So for example, our stress starts here and it goes up here. We stay there, right? So our stress stays there. So and then you get an individual that says, what's your stress level? It's a 2 out of 10. I'm not stressed, because they're constantly like that. And they have been like that for 5-7 years like that, right? Yeah. How can that individual, if someone who's listening may be out there and saying that they're not stressed, how can they identify to make them a little bit more, you spoke about awareness, how can they be a little bit more aware that they actually may be stressed?
I think, and you're actually touching on a really good point. We need to remember that our body's physiological reaction to stress is always the same. Now, what I mean by that is, stress comes in the form of an actual stressful job, let's say, or in a stressful event. You're unwell, family's unwell, trauma. But then it also comes from stress that we put on ourselves. Arguing with someone, over exercising is stress on the body, or diet, existing inflammation, and so forth. So we have to remember that stress doesn't always mean I've got a stressful job. So for that individual, we need to work out what stress looks like for them. And it could just be they're over-exercising. And that's when we need to explain that the physiological response to any form of stress, no matter where it comes from, is always the same. It is that release of cortisol that we know as our stress hormone, which is part of the very first response that our body has to stress, which is the activation of the HPA axis. It's our first response. So it's there for a reason. It fulfills its purpose, whether it's an acute stress or a chronic stress. And then when that stress is gone, our bodies should go back to normal. And in regards to digestion, it moves blood away from the digestive tract, and together with norepinephrine, it affects gastric emptying, motility, and transit time. And we just have to remember, and when we talk to patients, we have to go through that list of, well, what could stress look like to this person? Doesn't matter. The end result is always the same physiologically. So think about somebody that doesn't have a stressful job, but just over-exercises, parties really hard, doesn't look after themselves as far as food, lots of alcohol. The body's reaction is still the same as if you had a really high-pressure job. So does that make sense?
Yeah, I love that point. I absolutely love that point. It's kind of like that individual, like you said, it's partying hard, loving life, eating all that food. In their head, oh, I'm not stressed. Yeah, but the things that you're doing are creating stress to the body. So having a stressful job versus, let's say, exercising may produce the same effect, that same digestive issues that might happen, the same anxiety as each other, or eating that food, that takeaway food. Even though you might be calm, you're eating that takeaway food that might be an allergy or intolerance that may trigger it, may cause that stress. So I love that point that you just said, and I think that's definitely a golden point right there, that we need to understand that stress comes in all different forms and it's different to every single individual.
Yeah, and just, because I see a lot of young women that, don't have their periods, and over-exercising is a really big driver. And it's explaining that, well, for you, this is how stress is presenting. And, there might be some emotional stress or something like that as well. But, digestion and reproduction is not priority of the body when it's under stress, so it's shut down. So, yeah, it's really looking at the individual as to how stress is presenting for them.
And I mean, look, that, that CrossFit or that F45 might get your endorphins up for that hour after, and you may feel amazing. But what you're saying is it actually may be causing you a leaky gut. It may be causing you anxiety.
Overstressing. So over-exercising, overstressing too. So that's really key. Exercise and movement is essential, 100%. But cortisol reduction. So we're talking about excessive exercise, which is, very extreme.
Yeah. And this is why it's key to sit down with a practitioner that understands all this and that understands you and gets all the information from you, so they can see what your kind of like level is at. Yeah.
So, and talking from experience, I've been there. When you're in that state, you don't see it. You don't see it because to you it's like, well, I'm achieving so much. Look what I'm doing. But we have to think, okay, what toll has this had on my body? What toll has this had? And burnout is really real. Been there. I can tell you it's real, and I see it so much. And we just have to, sometimes we need other people to tell us that this is what's happening. And if we don't stop, this is where you're going to go.
Yeah. I mean, look, a lot of individuals have been there or are going to go there in regards to burnout. It is definitely something serious. It's not something that you can just push aside. No. Yeah. It probably took years and years to get there. So you can recover from it. You absolutely can, but the degree and how fast you do that and the way you do it's going to be different to everybody, and how much you are burning the candle at both ends will really make a difference. So self-care is just something that everybody needs to focus on. 100%. So look, if we can't eliminate stress completely, for example, we want to go do that class, we want to eat that junk, we want to drink alcohol, we may want to do that, that stressful job for a certain period of time, and we know there is an end to it or something along those lines. And if we can't eliminate it completely out of our lives at the moment, what is our goal?
Well, our goal needs to be to remove unnecessary stress, right? And in my opinion, it's about becoming more resilient and learning to rest. So how can we best handle stress and support ourselves during those times? Prioritizing our health will definitely make us more resilient and cope better. And it also makes us work better and more productive as well. Working on mindset can be a key for a lot of people. Forming better habits, knowing how to fuel your bodies better, working with patients on their diet is key because most are running on empty, and maintaining that good gut health. So now that we've really identified the connection, we need to obviously work on gut health. It's part of the picture. Cortisol is not the enemy all the time. It serves a very important purpose and does very important biochemical functions within the body. So we need to remember that the body works best when it's in harmony, when there's a good balance and, the proper communication happening from all of the parts that we're made of. We are programmed to handle small, minor disruptions. But the way that we live now, our diet, lifestyle, and definitely our ongoing stress levels slowly chip away and disrupt that flow of communication. So We need to get better at acknowledging stress within and becoming more resilient so that we can bounce back easier.
Yeah, I love that resilience. You've mentioned that a few times throughout the podcast, building resilience. And I think it's not just with stress, it's with everything, especially with what's happened in 2020. I think it's the year of resilience building.
Yes, I love that. It's a good way to put it. It's exactly what this year has been.
Yeah. And I guess, as cliche as it may sound, it gets you stronger because you've gone through that stressful time, and if something similar comes, you've been through it. You can sit down and be like, I survived.
Yeah, exactly. And so now, how can I, if I have to go through this again, what have I learned that can make my life easier the next time? Yeah.
Yeah. And even going back to what you just also said about nutrition, you said even though a lot of people are deficient in nutrients in their body, even though you may be eating food, you may not be getting the enough nutrients that your body needs to deal with the stress, because when you're stressed, it's removing all those nutrients. And yes, you may be putting food in your mouth, but that food may not be serving you well.
Yeah. So we tend to go for high calorie but really low nutrition type foods, crackers, bread, pasta. I mean, that's something, and like I use the example that when we're sort of skipping lunch and whatever, our body's telling us we want carbs, so we go for that. So we really need to obviously support our bodies better in the way that we eat, and so going through some tips as far as like digestion is concerned. Yeah, we do need to be better at limiting the alcohol and the stimulants because it has an impact on our gut. We need to be drinking lots of water. As we, I mentioned dry mouth. We really need to make sure that we're keeping hydrated. Incorporating easy to eat foods, things that don't require lots of energy from a digestive perspective. Soups, bone broth, smoothies can be really handy if that's what you've got. And especially if our appetite is affected when we are stressed. Chewing slowly, maybe for longer, don't rush when you eat. Get away from your desk when you're eating. So don't eat at your desk if you're at work, just get out. And consuming foods that, have lots of precursors for, your serotonin and GABA production, things like your eggs, your turkey, your salmon, good quality proteins, nuts and seeds, avocados, green leafy veg and so forth. I mean, there's a whole nother list, but we've really got to look after ourselves as far as our nutritional status when we are stressed. And what's really great, herbal teas are really wonderful for digestion when we are stressed. Like, I know that sounds very simplistic for a lot of people, but we have at our disposal so many amazing nervines and carminatives and adaptogens that we can easily and quite cheap, inexpensively incorporate into our diet daily. So I just really encourage all of my patients to stock up on certain types of herbal teas.
Yeah, I absolutely love herbal teas. As you saw, I'm drinking one right now. It doesn't look that nice in a glass thing, but I absolutely love herbal teas. And they're so underestimated, and everyone has access to them, like you said, and you can have them at, just boil some water and off you go. And there you have it. That may be able to assist you. So what is your favorite herbal tea?
I create a blend in my clinic. I pretty much use it almost for everything. And it always has chamomile, peppermint, and rosemary. They're the three. So it's really good for gut health, very good for calming the nervous system down, but it's not sedating. So if you still need to work, the rosemary is really great at keeping focus, increasing circulation to the brain. Really good for memory. It's anti-inflammatory. It's anxiolytic, so good for anxiety. And it was the blend that I created when I was studying and I was going through, I was heading towards burnout, and I just found that I focused more, but I was really relaxed.
I love that.
Without a doubt, it's just my go-to, and it's really the only one that I have in my clinic, apart from like a yep tea when we're really sick and we've got lots of snot and stuff happening and fevers. But that is my go-to mix for gut and the nervous system support.
I love that mix. And it's so funny that you said you used it while you were studying, because I remember I had like rosemary, water, teas, everything when I was studying. I was like, got to get that brain focus on.
Yes. Yes.
Smelling that rosemary. Every time I walked past the rosemary bush, I was like, take some of that.
Yeah. So chamomile and peppermint are really easy for people to get hold of, like an organic version. Rosemary is sometimes not as available, but you can even just use the fresh rosemary as well, or even just dry it yourself at home and it will do the same thing. So it's just awesome. It really calms bloating down if that's a problem. And when you've got that nervous gut, those sort of butterflies in the tummy, that nauseated response to stress, that's your go-to.
Yeah. And I think I remember reading not long ago that rosemary also assists with EMF exposure. So helps protect our cells.
Yeah, well, it's a strong antioxidant. So yeah, definitely.
Crazy. This is why I love herbs. Oh my gosh, we could just keep going on and on and on. This is what happens when two naturopaths come together.
I know. I'm trying not to look at my dispensary as we talk, because I can come on. But and I just had a thought that when because we're talking about stress and digestion, anything that helps reduce sympathetic nervous system dominance will aid digestion. So deep breathing, alternate nostril breathing. And I know that you've spoken about the benefits of breathing before, so it'll be great for people that are new to breathing, deep breathing techniques, to probably listen to that. Things like mindfulness, meditation, hypnotherapy, counseling. It's when there's a history of trauma, whether it be physical or emotional, EFT, counseling, hypnotherapy. Resting, how about you just do nothing for a little bit? Sit on the couch with a cup of tea and just do nothing. Gentle exercise, exercise, including gentle exercise, yoga, laughing. Focus on a passion or a hobby that you have. Massage. We need to stop seeing going to get a massage as a treat.
Yes. I'm so glad that you said that. I'm one of those people that always says it's not a luxury, it's a must.
Yeah, absolutely. Really helps to dampen the sympathetic nervous system and put us, make us feel calm. I mean, we all know that. Proper sleep, good sleep hygiene, not taking on so much work. And, and also there's specific probiotics that have been shown, to help increase, serotonin levels and so forth. So, which you can chat to your practitioner about. So anything that helps to reduce sympathetic nervous system dominance will help with digestion.
Yeah, and it's as simple as that. And underneath that, there's so many things that can fall under. And you just gave us so many nuggets. I mean, if I was listening to this podcast, I would just get a notepad out or get your phone out and just start writing these down, because you just provided us with so many nuggets. It was like bam, 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 bam. And at the end of it, if you didn't get anything, just go get yourself a chamomile, peppermint, rosemary tea and sit on the couch and do nothing. That's what I got.
Give yourself permission that it's okay to rest. And, that ties into the whole mindset thing that we really need to give ourselves. Well, we shouldn't need to give ourselves permission, but some of us need to. And there's so many things that we can do to support ourselves during times of stress. And it's not, one thing is not going to work for everybody. So that's why we have this beautiful long list of things. Try something. If it doesn't work, don't give up and think, well, I have to deal with stress. It's just how it is. Try something different. And eventually you'll start to gather like a little toolkit of 3 or 4 things that work for you. So, and that's something I try and get every patient to do, is just explore different things. Some people don't like meditation, fine, but they really enjoy journaling in a book. Some people love going to yoga, other people will like doing Pilates, whatever sort of movement works for them. So we just need to explore things that work and that we enjoy, and we just stick with it when we need to support ourselves.
Yeah, I love that. The fact that you mentioned about individualism, how it's different for different people. And it's not just different for different people, it's different for you on a different day. We're cyclic beings. I mean, what's going to work today may not work tomorrow. It doesn't mean you did it wrong. It just means it's a cycle.
That's right. I'm so glad you said that. And so having a couple of things up your sleeve that you've tried and tested, and just trying new things as well. is something that we always need to keep exploring. It's not just try this week and then that's it. For the rest of our lives, we need to be trying new ways of resting, relaxing, having fun.
Yeah, have fun and laugh. That will definitely reduce your stress. Put on something funny, some comedy show, something that you find funny. Yeah. Drink that tea, sit on the couch and do nothing. Turn off your phone and have you time.
Yeah, I forgot about the phone. Definitely turn your phone off. Get rid of some of your social apps over the weekend. A lot of people are starting to do that. So, yeah, definitely the phone is a good one.
Yeah, or if you're going to have notifications, turn them off. You don't need that dopamine rush every single time. You don't need that addiction. You don't need that, that reliance.
Yeah, so true. So true.
Yeah. That's great. Wow, what an absolutely amazing podcast. I mean, Bianca, you've provided us with so many nuggets, golden nuggets with people just going to pull out and be like, my tool set is full. I'm ready. Let's head on stress. Let's build our resilience. Let's deal with this and become a better, stronger, successful person. So to finish off, I ask all my guests, as this is a natural health podcast, what is your best kept natural health hack, Bianca?
My health hack, it's probably not a secret, but when I was younger, my grandmother actually used to always tell me because I was sort of a little bit of a stressed kid. So she used to always say, lie down, put your legs up. And she used to always put a cushion underneath sort of my bum and my lower back. And she's like, I don't know how it works, but all I know is that you'll feel calm. And so I used to do that. And as I got older and obviously learning about all these things, we now know that lifting your legs up and having the heart the head below the heart helps to stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system. And it's something that in yoga they do all the time. So it's just funny that one of those things that my grandmother used to teach me when I was younger, actually there is a reason behind it. So yeah, just for those who don't do that, I would highly encourage you to do that because it works.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful that your grandma, put these things into your, into your life as you're younger. And we need to do more of these for individuals that we're surrounded with, Absolutely love that health hack. No one's definitely mentioned that one. So there's that one.
If you've done yoga, if you do yoga, then you definitely would know. But, and you just think about all of the little things that your grandparents or your parents have taught you, having a warm glass of milk before bed helps you put you to sleep. We know because of the tryptophan and things like that. But now we know the actual scientific reasons behind them. So I always like that because there's an emotional attachment with that story for me. So
yeah, I love that. It made me feel nice and warm. I'm gonna go lay down and put my feet up now too. Bianca, look, individuals may be listening to this and might be like, oh my gosh, I want to find out more. I want to reduce my stress. I understand that you have a program going on. Is that right? What can you tell us a little bit more about that?
So I created the Healthy Mindset program, beg your pardon, which is an accumulation of everything that I've learned over the years in regards to health and mindset and the way that our mindset affects our health. So it's really, I poured everything into this, and it's a way that we can learn to identify the stresses in our life, the way that we can identify the stress that we put on ourselves, things like self-criticism, perfectionism, overworking, and really identifying how these manifest physically in our lives. So, the aim here is for people to regain their energy, is to become clear, calm-minded, but also really focused, and to move through a lot of the self-sabotage talk that we often do to ourselves, and it holds us back. So that's one of the ways that people can work with me as well, as in my naturopathic practice if you've got lots of health things going on. But I just love working with stressed out people because I like teaching them that there is a better way to be.
Yeah, 100%. I love that. And I mean, if you're going to see anyone, you want to see Bianca out because if she loves it, then I mean, that's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. It can be really challenging, but once that awareness comes through for people, it's like things just change. And all of a sudden you start prioritizing your health and you just start to do these little changes which have this massive flow-on effect to your health. But then that translates to your everyday life. And so your happiness and your confidence and the way that we talk to ourselves. So it's very much a holistic view of health, the way I view health anyway. Yeah.
I absolutely love that. And what I'll do is I'll put a link to your program in the show notes and to your website and to your Instagram, all that stuff, so people can start following you and get that amazing information from you. Look, thank you so much for joining me today on the Natural Health Podcast. I really appreciate your time and all of the information that you've provided me with. You just bombarded us. I mean, the audience is so blessed and so lucky to have you provide all this information, because sometimes it's rare to get this information just blurted out, and there you go. There you have it. Off you go.
Oh, thank you. No, thank you. It's been so much fun, and I hope that people can get a little bit of clarity as to what might be happening in their bodies and stop stressing.
Yes, correct. Stop stressing. Thank you so much, Bianca. Thank you for joining us at the Natural Health Podcast. And remember, the missing link between failure and success is your health.